On this week's Political Figure episode, we've got what you'd get if you elected a used car salesman to Congress. Literally. Mr. Mike Kelly. On May 10th, 1948, George Joseph Mike Kelly Jr.'s parents couldn't decide on a basic white bitch name, so they went with all of them. Again. Kelly graduated from Butler High School and then attended the University of Notre Dame on a football scholarship. And I say attended because I've got no idea if he graduated or what he graduated with because it doesn't seem to say anywhere. After not finding really any information about his college experience on his Wikipedia page, I went to his own congressional website and read the biography that he has put up for himself. And there it says he graduated from Butler High School in 1966 and attended Notre Dame on a football scholarship. And that's it. Nothing about graduating from Notre Dame, nothing about what he studied, the degree he got, nothing about being involved in anything like Delta Kappa douchebag. So lacking any evidence or real information on the topic, I figured I would just do what Mike Kelly would do and make something up. Mike Kelly started attending Notre Dame in 1966 on a football scholarship, but was already suffering from extensive brain damage as a result of injuries sustained while playing football. As a result, he failed remedial math, intro to civics, and Econ 101. Then he got caught cheating on his business ethics class, which got him kicked out of school. However, his dad, who is a wealthy and sleazy car salesman, offered a large under-the-table donation to Notre Dame in order for this information to never be made public. And also something about the deep state, probably. Anyway, after he left college for whatever the reason was, he went back home to Butler and worked for Daddy's car dealership until it was handed to him in 1995. Dealerships which he still owns today. Not that there's any conflicts of interest there with him being a sitting congressperson. In 2010, he decided he wanted to take his sleazy car salesman skills to Congress and ran for Pennsylvania's 3rd Congressional District. He beat the Democratic incumbent and then was able to gerrymander his district into basically being non-competitive. However, in 2018, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court threw out their congressional maps and forced them to redraw the districts in a slightly less gerrymandered fashion. They renumbered him to the 16th, and we were almost rid of him from Congress when the border just narrowly avoided taking his home completely out of the district altogether, which would have made him ineligible to run in that district again. However, that didn't happen, and despite his district being slightly less friendly to him, it's still drawn in his favor, and he has been able to retain his seat. Through his nearly decade and a half in Congress, he has been putting in the hard work to try to make sure that the issues that matter get the attention they deserve. Like exposing the secret shadow government run by Barack Obama to undermine Donald Trump, which is a real thing he said to real people. And when he got caught, he said that was supposed to be a private statement, because that makes it better. In addition to filing against gay and interracial marriage protections, he also filed a resolution to amend the Constitution to outlaw gay marriage. Because he's all about his individual freedoms and states' rights to tell other states that they can't allow their individuals to have freedoms. In addition to often whining about abortion, he also cried like a little bitch that Obamacare said that insurance companies just had to pay for the healthcare decisions about contraceptives between a doctor and patient, because it may offend the delicate sensibilities of the higher moral convictions of massive health insurance companies about women being on the pill while they deny insulin claims to diabetics who need their medication to live. It's just not fair to those poor, persecuted insurance companies. Well, his party was actively trying to pretend like COVID was some giant conspiracy and force in-person voting for congressional members. He said he needed a surrogate voter to show up and do his job for him because of COVID. And him and some of his colleagues used their COVID concern time off to instead go to the Conservative Political Action Conference, spending the week in a big room full of rich anti-masker douchebags and political operatives. But his COVID hypocrisy doesn't stop there, as he has voted repeatedly against COVID relief for regular citizens, and he's argued against debt relief for students. And then he, a man who has a net worth of over $14 million, applied for and received nearly $1 million in PPP loans that he then got entirely forgiven. Nothing like a multi-million-dollar welfare queen fighting against $10,000 in student loan forgiveness while cashing $1 million welfare check. He also voted against Katie Porter's Truth Act that would have required companies who received bailout money from the federal government, like his, to make that information public. In 2015, he was arguing in favor of a bill that would have allowed car dealerships, like the ones that he owns, to rent or loan out cars that had safety recalls that had not yet been repaired, saying, and I quote, "There is not a single person in this business who would ever put one of our customers in a car that is defective or has a recall that has not been repaired." And we all know car salesmen are world-renowned for their honesty, integrity, and interest in public safety. Which one would wonder why, if he's saying they would never do it, it, he was arguing for a bill that would allow them to do that. And we got our answer thanks to a local Pennsylvania news station in 2019, when they reported that he had nearly 20 cars on his lots that he was attempting to sell that had unrepaired recalls. In 2021, the Office of Congressional Ethics released a report saying that they had strong reason to believe that Mike and his wife had engaged in insider trading that was both illegal and against House rules, recommending a subpoena of his financial records and an investigation into that. That probe is still ongoing. In 2019, Mike Kelly made the argument, publicly, that being an Anglo-Saxon Irish Catholic made him a person of color. So apparently mayo-slathered Wonder Bread is a color now. Once Trump was elected, Mike was one of the quickest ones to jump up and show the entire world his amazing talent of how far he could shove the orange sherbet push-up down his throat without gagging. Fighting against the Ways and Means Committee that he sits on, releasing Trump's tax returns. When Trump got impeached the first time, he said like Pearl Harbor, it was a day that would live in infamy, because we all know that a draft dodger being held accountable for treason is exactly the same as 2,400 American service members being killed in a surprise attack. He was also an ardent election fraud conspiracy theorist, trying repeatedly to subvert the election in his state, filing a lawsuit with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to dismiss all the mail-in ballots. He was implicated in a false elector scheme. He signed his support for the state of Texas to be able to sue the state of Pennsylvania to overturn the election, which is weird because one state can't tell another state what to do with their election stuff, so that didn't make a whole lot of sense. And while most of what he does makes him an irrefutable douchebag, it is worth mentioning that he tends to be more moderate and reasonable than many of his colleagues. Take that as you will. He has not publicly endorsed impeachment attempts against Joe Biden. However, being on the House Ways and Means Committee, he has wasted some of their time investigating it. He voted on the extension to avoid the government shutdown, and has a relatively decent history of being bipartisan and reaching across the aisle to get legislation passed. I'm sure much of this was motivated by self-preservation, being that he's in a competitive district in a very purple state, but credit where it's due nonetheless. That said, his hand in attempts to undermine the election results of his state and overthrow a presidential election cannot be overstated in how bad that is and how bad of a person that makes him and how bad of a public servant that makes him. And that said, Pennsylvania's 16th district, after nearly a decade and a half of having a sleazy car salesman and flabby, mediocre fascist represent you, in 2024, maybe it's time to show him the door.